Welcome back, guys. Today we're going to continue our college football predictions for week 4. We're already in week 4? Season's already flying by. But anyway, last week I was 6 and 6, total season record 16 and 19, and I felt like I have not predicted a lot of games this year. But luckily, we do have a pretty decent slate of games. And we're going to start off with Syracuse taking on Stanford. And I believe this is the first time these two schools ever met, as Stanford's now part of the ACC. But the last time we saw Syracuse, they stunned Georgia Tech, and quarterback Kyle McCord has found new life. Sometimes he need to go. Sometimes quarterbacks need to go to a smaller school to be productive. That's exactly what's happening to him. Stanford, I believe they played a no-name school last time we saw them. They had a bye week last week. Both schools, in fact, had a bye week. And this game being played in Syracuse, I think Syracuse is a sleeper team in the ACC, and I am going to roll with them to win this game. And I'm not expecting it to be that close either. Next we have is the Illinois Fighting Illini taking on the Nebraska Cornhuskers. And in this game, this is being played in Nebraska. Last time we saw them, they played a no-name school, but hey, 2 weeks ago they beat up on Colorado, and the last time Illinois was talked about here was when they beat Kansas at home. And we're gonna talk about Kansas in a bit, but Nebraska, they're giving them 10 points. That's very disrespectful. I am gonna go ahead and pick them to win the game, but I expect a little more fight from Illinois. I think they're better than a 10-point spread. And speaking of teams that are better than their spread, North Carolina State taking on Clemson. And the last time I talked about NC State was week 2 when they got blown out by Tennessee. And as a matter of fact, this season, State has been one of the more disappointing schools I've seen so far. Sure, they're 2-1, but they're not really winning they're not winning in a good fashion. Like I think they played Louisiana Tech last week or Western Carolina, one of those two schools, and they only won by like 10 points. Meanwhile, Clemson, last time we talked about them was in week 1 when they got blown out by Georgia. Luckily, the next week, they blew out Appalachian State as Cade Klubnik had a career day. Now, Clemson's given 20 points. I do think they're going to win, and I don't think this is predicted. I don't think this is going to be close. This might be a bloodbath in Death Valley. And speaking of disappointments, we have the Florida Gators taking on Mississippi State, where Mississippi State last week lost to Toledo at home, while Florida lost to Texas A&M at home as questionable coaching decisions as Billy Napier was rotating DJ Lagway and Graham Mertz in and out the two quarterback system, which never really works. I don't know who's going to start this game. And right now, Florida is favored by 6 points. And I do think they're going to win. But if they lose to an underwhelming and disappointing Mississippi State school, I don't think Billy Napier survives this week if that happens. And then we have the first Big 12 conference game for these two schools with the University of Houston taking on Cincinnati. As Houston beat Rice, got their first win of the season, and Cincinnati, they rebounded after they lost to Pitt at home week 2. They rebounded by beating in-state rival Miami of Ohio. Cincinnati is given 3 points to this game. I am going to pick them to win, but I do expect this game to be better than expected. I hope Houston gives out a good fight. And following that, we have the Kansas Jayhawks taking on West Virginia. And what the heck is happening to Kansas? They're going back to old Kansas. We want new Kansas, the one that's been winning. Because the last two games, they lost to Illinois, a game that I thought they should have won. And they lost to UNLV at home. Actually, I do know what the problem with the school is. Costly turnovers has been letting this school down. Meanwhile, West Virginia lost the backyard brawl to Pitt, which I've heard they've learned, even despite them being the benefactor of questionable officiating. And West Virginia's, I do think they're at home. They should rebound in this game. But I will not be surprised if Kansas wake up and take back what's theirs. Then we have USC Trojans taking on the Michigan Wolverines. And I felt like I have not talked about USC that much this year. Sure, they beat LSU week 1, but after that, I think they played a no-name school at bye week. Meanwhile, Michigan, they've been looking underwhelming these last 3 games. To the point where the expected starter, Alex Orji, is going to get his first ever start. He should have been starting all the way in week 1. They started a freshman quarterback, but it's clear that he needs time to develop. He hasn't been playing that bad, but they could get a lot better with Orji with his mobility. The USC is given 5 points, but this game is in the big house. It's at noon, and since they made a QB change, I'm gonna go upset. I'm taking Michigan to win at home. And following that, we have the Arkansas Pig Sooie Razorbacks taking on the Auburn Tigers. Speaking of QB changes, Auburn made one last week against New Mexico, and it worked. It worked out fine for them. No more Peyton Thorne for them. Meanwhile, Arkansas. Last time that I talked about them was in week 2, where they lost to Oklahoma State. But it was pretty much that was a game that which someone had to lose. Arkansas did play a really good game that day. And I think this is going to be a really good game here for figure out where these two schools are at with the SEC. It's at home, so that means I'm going to lean towards the Auburn Tigers to win. But I do think Arkansas is going to give a really good fight for this one. And following that, we have LSU's going to walk the dog on UCLA. No explanation. Let's move on. And following that, we have Georgia Tech taking on Louisville, which really 10 points for Louisville. That's insane. Also, in that background picture, am I looking at Churchill Downs in that picture? Let me know in the comments below if that is Churchill Downs. But anyway, Georgia Tech. I felt like I have. Last time I talked about them, they lost to Syracuse week 2, and I think they played a no-name school the next week. Louisville, they've been playing very quiet football. I have not talked about them much at all, as this the ACC opener for both schools. And again, Louisville 10.5 points is a bit of a reach. I'm still going to pick them to win the game, but they will not cover. I don't think they're going to cover. Next up, we have is Arizona State taking on Texas Tech, in which Arizona State, last time I talked about them was again 2 weeks ago, where they beat up on Mississippi State at home. Good for them. And Texas Tech, I've been a bit concerned with this school. But wasn't they the same school that took Abilene Christian to overtime? That's not good for a Power 4 conference. Just saying. But here, I think this was a good toss up. I'm going to roll with Texas Tech to win. They're at home, and they're favored by 3 points. Yeah. And following that, we have Rutgers taking on Virginia Tech. And in this game, well, before I talk about this game, Virginia Tech finally exercised a demon. They finally beat Old Dominion soundly. Yes, they beat this school before, but Old Dominion has been giving Virginia Tech problems in the past. So good for them. And it looked like their week 1 loss to Vanderbilt was I'm just chalked up to a bad day. Rutgers, I have not talked about this school much at all, so I don't know how they're doing. Virginia Tech is favored by 3. It is an easy choice for me to go with them, but I will not be surprised if Rutgers win. I'll say that. And then we have one of my first picks of game of the week that didn't quite make it to the game of the week spot. The Utah Utes taking on the Oklahoma State Cowboys. Where Utah, yeah, they won. I think both schools played no-name schools and won. Well, I think Utah, last time I talked about them, they played Baylor and they walked the dog on them. Oklahoma State, last week they played Tulsa on the road and they pretty much made a statement. And I think this game is going to be very, very close. Now, the question is Cam Rising playing in this game? I'm not sure if he's playing. He didn't play last week. But if he's out again, here's what I'm going to do. I'm not going to make a prediction for this game. If Cam Rising's going to play, I am going to pick Utah. If he's not going to play, I'm going to pick Oklahoma State. Take as you will. Next up, we have is Vanderbilt taking on Missouri. And I'm actually kind of surprised Missouri's ranked in the top 10. Not that they're a bad school, but them top 10, when they have Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, Texas, all of the top 10 with them, Ole Miss too. Yeah, I'm pretty shocked about that one. But anyway, Missouri did get a top 25 win over Boston College, where it was a decently well played game, hard fought. And Vanderbilt, after a 2-0 start, lost to Georgia State at the last second. Now, Missouri, 20.5 points. They should win at home. I don't think this is going to be a problem for them. I do think they could cover here. Then we have an in-state rivalry with TCU taking on SMU, where TCU lost a heartbreaking home conference opener to UCF. And SMU, last time we saw them was 2 weeks ago when they lost to BYU, where I do not know what happened to Peyton Stone in that game. I think he got hurt. He did not finish the game for some reason. TCU is favored by 2.5 points. I don't know and because I don't know what's going on with Peyton Stone at quarterback, I gotta go with TCU on the road to win this one. And then we have Cal taking on Florida State. Florida State, Florida State, Florida State. You know, don't ever say, I never want to hear this school whine about not being made. Now there's a reason why they didn't make the playoffs. Because they were a one-man show in Jordan Travis. But of all the schools in college football, Florida State has by far been the most disappointing. 0-3, lost to a Group of 5 Memphis. DJ Uyangale has not been bitch as of the making of this video. Meanwhile, California, they've been playing good football. They're 3-0. They beat Auburn on the road a couple weeks ago. Then they turned around, beat San Diego State at home. Good for them. Making a good first impression for the ACC, the weakest conference in the Power 4. But back to Florida State. Man, this school's a mess. And I know DJ is far from the sole problem. This team has problems across the board. Biddy's saying that Mike Norvell isn't going to last the season. I'm actually going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he will last. But man, this is a disappointment. They're giving Florida 2 points, but I'm not taking it. I'm rolling with Cal to win on the road. Hopefully, by me picking against Florida State this time, they could finally wake up and play up to their potential. Next, we have is Northwestern taking on Washington. And last time I talked about Northwestern, again, 2 weeks ago, they lost to overtime to Duke. And Washington, they lost last week. They lost to their in-state rivals, to Washington State in Seattle. I'm surprised they were able to keep the Apple Cup rivalry alive. Good for them. But luckily, Washington does look like they're about to bounce back. I am going to go ahead and pick them to win. They're at home, double-digit favorites. This shouldn't be a problem for them. And then we have the Iowa Hawkeyes taking on the Minnesota Golden Gophers. And again, last time I talked about Iowa was 2 weeks ago, where they lost a heartbreaker at home due to Iowa State, in-state rival. But anyway, with this game, I think this is going to be a classic Iowa 12-10 game. There's not going to be a lot of offense. It's going to be running game, defense, little else. I am going to take Iowa to win on the road. And the big question is, not the 2.5 favorite, but will this go over under 24 points? Then we have Baylor taking on Colorado in Boulder. Baylor got a win over the Air Force last week that I didn't talk about. And Colorado beat their in-state rival in Colorado State on the road, where things got a bit chippy. The main headline is Shedeur Sanders not shaking the hand of the quarterback because he was talking a lot of junk. Newsflash, you were too. But anyway, Colorado is favored by 2 points. They should win this game. I am going to go ahead and take them to win. But Baylor, they're going to make things close. Also, I'm gonna give a shout out to Colorado's defense because they actually stepped up last week for once. Now we have Michigan State taking on Boston College. And the last time I talked about Michigan State, they beat Maryland on the road. Got a huge road win. And for Boston College, yes, they lost a tough ranked opponent to Missouri, but hey, they put up a good fight in that game. They shouldn't be that mad of their efforts. Boston College 6.5 point favorites. I think they do rebound at home to win this game, but I think Michigan State will make this close. And real quick, we have Kansas State taking on BYU. I want to apologize to Kansas State. They blew out Arizona, and I for some reason went with Arizona, and again my apologies. BYU, I guess I did talk about them this season when they beat up on SMU despite being double-digit underdogs. That's because SMU's quarterback got hurt. Kansas State, since I would against you last week, I'm not gonna fall for that again. I'm taking you for the win. And last but not least, this brings us to our game of the week. Tennessee taking on Oklahoma. Now, Tennessee, I know I have not talked about this school a lot, but every single game that they played this year, they have scored over 50 points in every single one of them. That offense is a well-oiled machine. As for Oklahoma, yes, they've been winning too, but they have not been winning this at the same level Tennessee has. This could be the game where Tennessee could decide if they're going to take that next step as the SEC best in the school. I do think this is going to be a interesting game. I'm going to go ahead and roll with Tennessee to win on the road in a very tough environment, night game in Oklahoma. But this will be the first time they will not score 50 in. Just keep that in mind. And that concludes my college football predictions for this week. Tell what you think in the comments below. Thanks for watching. Please gamble safely, and I'll see you next time.